Jake walked into the warm and busy restaurant with his girlfriend, Vanessa, at his side, and the moment the door closed behind them, something in the air shifted as if the whole room already knew trouble was about to start even before the couple reached their table, and Jake felt the atmosphere change, though he could not explain why. And Vanessa held her head high with the confidence of someone who believed the world belonged to her, and she expected everyone to notice her right away and give her the attention she wanted, while Jake just followed quietly, trying to enjoy the evening, but feeling a strange sense of tension grow around them. A young waitress named Lena walked toward them with a soft, polite smile and gentle eyes that made most customers feel calm, yet, for some reason, her presence made Vanessa frown instantly, and she let out a small dramatic sigh loud enough for the nearby tables to hear, as if she wanted people to look her way and side with her even though nothing had happened yet. And Jake glanced at her confused, but said nothing because he hoped the evening would go smoothly, and he did not want to start an argument this early in the night. And the sounds of clinking glasses and soft music filled the space, but somehow everything felt quieter when Lena arrived at their table. Lena welcomed them kindly and offered to show them to their seats, but Vanessa responded with a cold smirk while looking her up and down as if she were judging every detail from her hairstyle to her shoes. And Jake felt a knot form in his stomach because he could already tell Vanessa was not in a good mood, and she might take it out on someone who did not deserve it. And Lena gently guided them to a corner table that had soft lighting and a calm atmosphere, yet even this small kindness did not ease the tension that Vanessa seemed determined to create. And Jake tried to distract her by pointing out the nice decor, but she barely listened. The moment Lena handed them the menus, Vanessa leaned close to Jake and whispered loudly enough for Lena to hear, asking if the restaurant was running out of good staff lately, because the waitress looked lost and unprofessional. And Jake gave a nervous laugh, even though he knew it was wrong, but he felt trapped between wanting to keep Vanessa happy and wanting to defend someone who had done nothing wrong. And Lena pretended not to react, though her eyes flickered for just a second, showing a hint of hurt that she quickly hid behind her polite expression. And she waited patiently for their orders without letting her smile fade, and her calmness made the customers at the next table glance over with curiosity, sensing that something uncomfortable was happening. When Lena asked if they were ready to order, Vanessa rolled her eyes in a big dramatic motion and said she doubted the waitress could even understand simple English. And Jake bit his lip, wishing Vanessa would stop before things got worse. And he tried to signal to her with a quiet whisper, but she ignored him completely and seemed almost entertained by her own words, while Lena simply nodded and stood straight with a quiet dignity that surprised a few people nearby. And this made Vanessa even more annoyed, as if she expected Lena to react with fear or anger. But the waitress stayed calm, like she had heard such comments before, and learned to rise above them. Jake felt the weight of embarrassment settle on his shoulders, and he kept looking around, hoping no one was paying attention. But people were watching and listening without trying to be obvious, and Lena wrote down their order with steady hands before giving them a warm, polite thank you in a soft voice that held more strength than Vanessa expected. And for a brief moment, Jake noticed something strange in Lena's expression, a mix of patience, wisdom, and a hidden depth that did not match the simple role of a waitress. And he felt a small spark of curiosity about who she really was, even though he did not understand why. As Lena walked away, Vanessa leaned back in her chair and scoffed loudly, saying she could not stand people who pretended to be polite when they were clearly uneducated. And the customers around them exchanged uncomfortable glances because no one understood why Vanessa was acting so harshly toward someone who had been nothing but kind. And Jake felt a twist in his chest because he knew he should say something, but he kept quiet, hoping things would not get worse, though deep down he sensed the night was heading toward something unexpected and possibly unforgettable. And even the soft music in the restaurant seemed to grow heavier, as if the room itself was waiting for the moment when everything would finally change forever. From the moment Lena walked away from the table, A strange energy settled over the restaurant, like a quiet storm waiting to strike, and Vanessa seemed to feel it too, because instead of calming down, she leaned forward with a sharp smile that looked more like a challenge than anything else, and Jake sensed the danger growing even though he could not explain it, and he kept glancing around, wishing Vanessa would just relax and let the evening be normal. But Vanessa had no interest in normal. She tapped her fingers loudly on the table, making sure everyone nearby heard her impatience, and when Lena returned with water, Vanessa looked at her with cold amusement and asked in a slow, exaggerated voice if she knew how to pour without spilling, and Jake winced because the tone felt harsh and cruel, and the customers at the next table exchanged quiet looks as if they were watching a fire burn, but could not put it out, and Lena bowed her head politely before pouring the water with careful, steady hands, showing no fear, no anger, no frustration, just steady grace. Yet the calmer Lena acted, the more irritated Vanessa became, as if she wanted a reaction and was annoyed she could not get one. And she made another comment loud enough for half the restaurant to hear, saying she hoped the waitress understood at least a little English, because she did not want her order messed up by someone who barely knew what she was doing. And Jake whispered, "Vanessa, please stop," but she waved him off like his words were nothing more than background noise. Lena straightened after pouring the water and looked directly into Vanessa's eyes for the first time with a quiet strength that made Jake sit up straighter and made several nearby guests hold their breath. And Lena said in a soft voice that she understood English very well, and she was happy to answer any questions, and Vanessa narrowed her eyes like she sensed something she could not quite name, and replied with a mocking tone, saying she doubted that very much because the waitress sounded foreign and probably came from some place where people did not learn proper language. The room grew still as if the walls themselves were listening. And Jake felt heat rise in his face because he knew Vanessa was crossing lines she should not cross, and the silence around them made everything feel heavier and sharper. And Lena simply nodded again, but there was something new in her expression. Now something Jake could not ride, and it made him uneasy because he had never seen a waitress look at someone with such calm control in the face of so much disrespect. When Lena walked away again, Vanessa let out a harsh laugh and said she found it funny that someone like that thought she could act professional, and Jake looked down at his hands because he felt guilt now, a deep, uncomfortable guilt that made him wish he had spoken up sooner, and he wondered what the other guests were thinking of him for sitting quietly while Vanessa behaved this way, and the people around them avoided eye contact, but their stiff shoulders and tight lips made it clear they were listening. Then something unexpected happened because a couple sitting 2 tables away whispered to each other in Arabic and glanced at Vanessa with disapproval, and Jake noticed but Vanessa did not, and the couple shook their heads quietly as if they already knew something Jake did not know. And when Lena reappeared again, she carried a small notepad and her smile returned, but this time Jake saw the fire behind it, a hidden spark that seemed to glow brighter with every rude comment from Vanessa. Vanessa asked for a special adjustment to her meal, but she explained it in a rude and confusing way, and Lena listened carefully, but before she could respond, Vanessa added a final sting, saying she hoped the waitress did not mix things up like someone who had never worked in a real restaurant before. And Jake felt the air tighten like an invisible rope pulling around all of them, and he wished the scene would end, but he could tell it was just beginning because Lena did not react the way Vanessa expected. Instead, Lena repeated the order perfectly, then asked a gentle clarifying question in a calm, soft tone, and the accuracy of her words made Vanessa blink in surprise, because she had not expected the waitress to understand such details so quickly. And Jake noticed Vanessa's expression shift for a moment, showing tiny cracks of confusion, but she quickly hid them beneath a new wave of arrogance, and she scoffed again, saying maybe the waitress could memorize words, but she probably could not speak anything complicated. The customers around them glanced at one another, sensing something was building, something big and unseen, and even the restaurant manager paused behind the counter, watching with a thoughtful frown, and Jake ran a hand through his hair, feeling a mixture of worry, frustration, and dread, because he knew Vanessa would not stop, and he knew the moment of breaking was coming, closer, like footsteps approaching slowly but surely. As Lena turned to leave, Vanessa muttered another insult under her breath, but loud enough for all to hear, saying she wondered what kind of strange language people like. Lena spoke at home and hoping it was not something ugly, because she did not want it near her food, and Jake froze because he saw the tiny shift in Lena's shoulders, a sign that the calm surface was about to break, and he sensed something powerful hidden behind her quiet smile, something Vanessa was completely unprepared for. The moment Lena walked back toward the table carrying their appetizers, the entire restaurant felt the tension rise like invisible smoke, filling every corner and every breath, and people who had been chatting only minutes earlier were now strangely quiet, watching the scene unfold with the kind of focus usually saved for important moments. And Jake could feel it, too, because the air around him felt heavier and thicker, and he wished desperately that Vanessa would stop before something truly embarrassing happened. Yet Vanessa looked more excited than ever, as if she believed the world was a stage made only for her drama. When Lena placed the plates gently on the table, Vanessa leaned back with a proud smirk and asked in a loud, sharp voice if the waitress understood anything she had said earlier, because she would not tolerate her food being made wrong or served badly. And Jake tried to interrupt, saying everything looked fine, but Vanessa silenced him with a quick gesture and continued speaking as if his words carried no value at all, and Lena simply stood there holding the notepad with quiet hands and an expression that looked peaceful on the surface but carried a deeper strength that many in the room noticed, even though Vanessa did note. A group of people at a nearby table exchanged uneasy whispers, and one of them glanced at Lena with sympathy while another looked at Vanessa with disbelief, because they could not understand why someone would treat another person this way, especially someone who had been nothing but patient and respectful. And a soft rustle spread across the restaurant as more guests leaned slightly forward, wanting to hear every word without making it obvious, and Jake felt the eyes on them, and it made sweat gather on the back of his neck as he wished he could disappear into the chair. Vanessa took a bite of her food, then made an exaggerated face of disgust, saying it tasted wrong, even though Jake knew it tasted fine because he had the same dish in front of him, and it smelled perfect, and the customers around them realized she was not really complaining about the food. She was complaining because she wanted to push Lena even further, and Lena responded with a calm sorry and asked what exactly was wrong, and Vanessa waved her hand dismissively, saying she could not explain things to someone who probably did not understand English well enough to follow simple instructions. Jake noticed the tiny flicker in Lena's eyes again, the same spark he had seen earlier, and he felt a warning echo inside him, like a small voice saying something was coming. And he looked around at the other customers and noticed many of them were watching Lena with curiosity and respect, as if they sensed she was not just a normal waitress, and maybe not someone who would stay silent for long while being treated so unfairly. Vanessa turned to Jake and said loudly that she felt uncomfortable having someone like Lena handle her food, and she wanted the manager to send a different server, preferably someone who actually spoke properly. And Jake felt heat crawl up his neck because he knew everyone heard that, and he knew how terrible it sounded, and he whispered again, trying to calm Vanessa. But she ignored him completely and kept talking in that same loud voice that made the room feel smaller and tighter. Lena listened without interrupting, and then spoke softly, saying she understood the concern and she could bring the manager if needed. And Vanessa raised an eyebrow like she had won some silent battle, and nodded dramatically, saying yes, bring him, because she wanted someone professional to handle the table. And Jake watched as Lena gave a polite bow of her head before turning away, with slow, peaceful steps, as if she was not hurt by the words, but instead thinking carefully about something bigger. When she walked toward the counter, a quiet wave of whispers followed her, because the customers sensed the moment was shifting, and the energy in the room was changing into something they could not quite name. And even the staff behind the counter paused in their tasks watching her approach with careful eyes filled with recognition and understanding, as if they knew what Lena was capable of and were waiting for the next move. Vanessa sat back feeling victorious and even pulled out her phone, taking a quick picture of her food with an annoyed expression, saying she wanted to warn people online about bad service. And Jake buried his face in his hands because he knew this had gone far past embarrassment and into something much worse, and he could feel people silently judging him for not stopping Vanessa sooner, and his heart felt heavy with regret when Lena returned. She was not alone because the manager followed her, but instead of looking angry or worried, he looked calm, thoughtful, and slightly amused, as if he knew more than Vanessa could ever imagine, and he stood beside Lena with his arms crossed, listening. As Vanessa launched into a long, rude explanation about how terrible the service had been, and how the waitress could not even understand English, and how she did not want someone like that near her table. But something unexpected happened, because instead of addressing Vanessa, immediately the manager looked at Lena with a respectful nod, and then glanced around the room, noticing all the watching eyes, and in that moment something shifted like a soft click inside the atmosphere, and everyone sensed the turning point had finally arrived, and whatever happened next would not be what Vanessa expected. Restaurant felt strangely silent as the manager stepped closer to Vanessa's table, and every nearby guest leaned just a little forward, pretending to look at their menus while actually listening to every breath and every word. And Jake could feel his stomach twist because he knew something important was coming, something he could not stop, and something Vanessa had no idea she was. Walking into, Vanessa lifted her chin as if she expected applause for her complaint, and she crossed her legs with a proud smile, ready to continue talking, but the manager raised his hand gently, asking her to pause, and this small gesture surprised a few people because it held a calm authority that did not match the usual reaction of someone dealing with a rude customer. And Jake noticed the way Lena stood beside him with steady shoulders and soft eyes, as if she already knew how this conversation would end, and the tension grew thicker like a warm fog, settling over every table. The manager asked Vanessa in a polite voice what the problem was, and Vanessa immediately launched into another long speech, saying the service was awful, and the waitress did not understand English, and the food tasted wrong, and she did not want someone like that handling her order. And she spoke loudly enough that people on the far side of the restaurant could hear her, and some of them exchanged quiet glances of disbelief while others shook their heads, gently unable to understand how someone could be so proud of hurting another person. Jake wished he could pull Vanessa away, but he felt stuck as if invisible ropes tied him to his chair, and he looked at Lena, who stood silent beside the manager, holding her notepad with the same calm grace she had shown all evening, and Jake sensed something powerful behind her quiet expression, something Vanessa kept ignoring, something the whole room was slowly beginning to realize. When Vanessa finished talking, she folded her arms and waited with a smirk, expecting the manager to apologize and remove Lena from the table, but the manager did not react the way she imagined, because he turned first to Lena and asked softly if she wanted to say anything, and Lena shook her head politely, as if she preferred the manager handle things, though her calm expression held a deeper meaning that made several guests lean even closer. The manager took a slow breath, and Jake felt the moment stretch like a long pull of string before a snap, and the manager finally looked at Vanessa directly and thanked her for sharing her thoughts, but he added gently that Lena had not done anything wrong, and that her service had been polite, respectful, and accurate. And Vanessa blinked hard as if she could not understand the words, and she laughed sharply, saying the manager clearly had no idea how bad the waitress was. But then the manager said something that caught the attention of every single person in the room, because he said Lena was not only well-trained, but she was one of the most skilled employees in the entire restaurant, and she spoke several languages fluently and worked with incredible patience every day. And Vanessa stared at him, confused, unable to process the idea that the person she had been mocking so fearlessly might actually be more capable than she believed. Jake saw the shock forming in Vanessa's eyes, and he saw the hope forming in the eyes of the guests around them, as if everyone was silently rooting for Lena to finally take her stand. And the air grew heavier again, not with anger, but with anticipation, like the whole room was waiting for the truth to finally rise to the surface. Vanessa scoffed again, refusing to believe anything she was hearing, and she said loudly that she doubted a waitress like Lena could speak any real language other than broken English, and that was when several people in the restaurant exchanged surprised looks because they had overheard whispers earlier in Arabic coming from a few tables, and they seemed to know a secret that Vanessa did not know. Jake swallowed hard because he felt something approaching a moment that felt big and impossible to stop, and he could see Lena's hands tighten slightly around her notepad, not in fear, but in readiness, like someone preparing to reveal something important, something she had held inside until now. And Jake wondered if this was the breaking point he had sensed all evening. The manager looked at Lena again with quiet respect, and then nodded at her as if giving her permission to speak if she wanted, and Lena lifted her head slowly, her eyes calm yet filled with a new kind of strength that made several guests whisper softly, and the room felt almost electric, full of curiosity and expectation. Lena stepped forward a little, and her voice, when she spoke, was soft, but carried clearly across the tables, and she said she understood everything Vanessa had said from the very beginning, and she had stayed calm out of respect for the restaurant and its guests. But respect was something that had to be given in return, and she had received none from Vanessa. This made Vanessa's smirk fade slightly, but she still looked unconvinced, and Jake could feel his heartbeat speed up, because he knew Lena was not finished, and the manager stepped back slightly, giving her the space to speak freely, and the guests leaned in even more, their breaths quiet and their eyes wide. And then, with a slow, calm inhale, Lena prepared to say the words that everyone in the room unknowingly waited for, words Vanessa never expected, and words that would change the entire atmosphere in a single moment. The restaurant felt completely still as Lena took one slow step forward, and every person in the room seemed to hold their breath, waiting for something they could feel in the air, but could not see. And Jake felt his heart pounding because he knew this moment was the one everything had been building toward. And Vanessa sat with her arms folded, acting confident, but something in her eyes showed a flicker of uncertainty, as if she sensed the ground shifting under her feet. Lena looked at Vanessa gently, not with anger, but with a calm that carried quiet strength, and this calmness only made the tension sharper, because people expected Lena to break or to argue. But she did not, and the peaceful expression on her face made Vanessa lean back slightly, as if she did not understand how a waitress she had been mocking all night could stand so steady and confident. The manager stepped aside, giving Lena all the space she needed, and the guests leaned even closer, pretending to adjust their plates or sip their water, but really focusing on every tiny sound, every lift of a breath, every movement of Lena's lips. And Jake swallowed hard because he felt like he was about to witness something he would never forget. Lena began speaking slowly at first, in soft English, saying that she had listened to every word Vanessa had said, and she had accepted the insults with patience. But patience was not endless, and respect needed to go both ways. And Vanessa scoffed loudly, trying to laugh off the moment. But her voice cracked slightly, betraying her nerves, and Lena saw it clearly, and that tiny shift made her next decision even stronger. Without warning, Lena changed her voice and switched to Arabic, releasing the stream of beautiful, powerful words that filled the entire restaurant like music, carrying strength, elegance, and fire all at once. And people who understood Arabic sat up instantly, their eyes wide with surprise and admiration, and those who did not understand still felt the force behind every syllable. Her words in Arabic carried deep meaning and emotion, and though Vanessa did not understand a single part, she clearly felt the weight of it, because Lena's tone held a message stronger than any insult Vanessa had thrown all night. And as Lena spoke, the couple at the nearby table, who had whispered earlier in Arabic, nodded with great respect, their faces glowing with pride and understanding. The entire room became wrapped in the moment, and even the soft music playing through. The speakers seemed to fade away as if the whole world was listening only to Lena and her voice, and Vanessa's eyes darted around confused, unsure why so many people looked shocked and impressed, and Jake leaned forward trying to understand even a little of what Lena was saying, but he could only feel the power behind the foreign language like a wave moving quietly yet strongly across the tables. When Lena finally finished her Arabic statement, she paused, letting the silence settle, and the room felt full of electricity, like lightning waiting to strike, and one man who understood Arabic whispered softly to his friend, repeating the meaning in English, saying that Lena had told Vanessa respect is free, but you appear too poor to offer any, and this whisper was just loud enough for several guests to hear, and soon the message spread across the room like a gentle ripple of disbelief, surprise, and admiration. Vanessa's eyes widened in confusion because she realized everyone else understood something she did not, and she asked sharply what Lena had just said, but her voice trembled and the shaking in her tone showed that her confidence was slipping fast, and Jake felt both stunned and guilty because he knew Lena had finally spoken the truth Vanessa needed to hear, even if she refused to accept it. Lena looked at Vanessa again with the same calm, but now there was something new in her eyes, something strong and unbreakable, and she switched back to English, saying gently that she had chosen not to respond earlier because she believed kindness was a strength, but sometimes silence allowed harm to continue, and she did not want that for herself or anyone else working there. Several people in the restaurant nodded quietly, and a few even whispered small supportive comments, hoping Lena would hear them and feel encouraged, and the manager stood behind her with pride in his expression, like he had known all along that Lena carried a rare kind of strength that needed only the right moment to shine. Vanessa opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out as she looked around at the faces watching her, and for the first time, she realized she had lost control of the room because every single person saw her differently. Now not as a confident guest, but as someone who had allowed cruelty to guide her actions, and the weight of that shift made her shoulders shrink slightly as if she were trying to hide from the truth gathering around her. Jake stared at Lena completely speechless because he had never seen such quiet power from anyone, and he felt a mixture of regret and awe because he knew he had stayed silent when he should have defended her, and that thought sat heavy on his chest like a stone he could not lift. Lena then stepped back slightly beside the manager, holding her notepad with steady hands, while the entire room waited for what Vanessa would do next, and this moment felt like a turning point, one that would either bring an apology or reveal even deeper pride. But either way, nothing would ever be the same again.